Hi, welcome back to the Your Extraordinary Life podcast and YouTube series. Today, I wanted to have sort of a sit down, casual conversation on feeling lost in your 20s. I am in this place right now where I'm in my late 20s, and I feel like I've experienced a lot of the highs and the lows of the 20s, but I also feel like I'm at this point where like anything and everything could happen, so it can feel both scary or exciting. And I feel like it's a theme that's been coming up in a lot of conversations with a lot of my peers that are also in their 20s. And so I wanted to talk about it today, and maybe some of the messages and some of the themes from this might resonate with you. And while you're here, my name is Mahna Ghafori, and go ahead and subscribe or follow along if you are interested in this type of content. I talk about living your most extraordinary life, following whatever message or path is put on your heart, and yeah, how to live your most extraordinary life, whatever it looks like for you. So I feel like when you're in your 20s, there's a lot of pressure from society and also from yourself of having to have everything figured out because you're sort of in this system of schooling your entire life where you're a kid and you go to school and you follow all the rules, and maybe you go to university if it's normalized where you're from. For me in the United States, it's almost like 100% expectation. You must go to university and you graduate. And then after that, you're just sort of on your own for the first time in your life. And it can feel very isolating after having had guidance your entire life. And like, this is your next step. This is what you do. You find that you graduate and you're just sort of on your own. And that can be a very lonely time, a very isolating time, and also a very confusing time because you're like, well, I'm not exactly sure if this path of this job that I'm following or pursuing is what's right for me. And I feel like, especially nowadays in the age of social media, where there's a multitude of options displayed to us, and it's at a rate that has never been experienced before in society. Because before, all we had to compare ourselves to was whoever was in our family or whoever was in our community or church or town, and maybe somebody that you heard about in a magazine or article online. But nowadays, we have so many means of comparison and options and decisions because we have the entire world connected on a scale that's never been accessible before. And so even if we do make a decision that at a certain time does feel aligned for us, it can be really easy to be caught up in these loops of comparison to the multitude of other decisions out there because of just how everything is compared. And a lot of the times it can also seem like a highlight reel without seeing the lows of it, which can lead us to doubt ourselves or judge ourselves on why we're feeling these lower emotions when really all emotions are natural. And so if you're feeling that lost and that confusion, you are not alone. I feel like the other pressure that's placed on you in your 20s is feeling like the decisions that you make now are so important because they have to shape the entire rest of your life. And I definitely feel that. I felt that when I was in my corporate role working as a tech consultant for a big four consulting firm, I saw my entire life sort of planned out and laid out for me. I knew that I was going to be a consultant, and then I was going to be what is the word for it? And then I was going to be promoted. Oh yeah. I was going to be promoted to a senior consultant. That's how much I've repressed all of that out of my mind. No hate, it just wasn't aligned for me. And so then you're promoted to a senior consultant, and then a manager, and then a senior manager, and then a partner. And I just felt like everything was laid out, and I just had to follow the hamster wheel and the steps of that path, and it just was not aligned. And I think right now, your 20s, it's such an exciting opportunity because with the breakdown of sort of this age of Capricorn ending and going into the age of Aquarius, where like these giant structures are being broken down and there's so much flexibility of choice and rebellion and freedom that's to come. And so I remember when I was making the decision to quit my corporate job and pursue my travel photography business, it was terrifying, but it also felt like it was so much alignment from my heart and sort of this like pull of the path that was next and that I needed to take. And so it also, like, that pressure can come because you're like, well, if this choice that I'm making, is it going to be binding for the rest of my life? But some advice a mentor gave me is that you are never stuck in life. You're not a tree. And even trees are able to move, believe it or not. Through their root systems, they are able to make like micro, tiny movements throughout their like lifespan of being a tree. And so you as a human, thankfully, are not a tree. And as stuck as you may seem sometimes just that like pattern shift or like getting up, changing your state, moving, even going for like a swim in the ocean, like drinking some water, like little things like that can help shift my mood so much to be like, wow, I'm not stuck in this path and there are other options out there that I can pursue that might be more fulfilling. So then a lot of the times we get to this point where we're like, okay, I'm in my 20s. I know that what I'm doing right now doesn't feel aligned for me. I feel such a strong pull to go down this separate path, but I feel like I'm not so good at it yet. Like you feel like you're not an expert. You feel all this comparison to people who are out there already doing it so much better. And you're really just doubting yourself and you're doubting even getting started because you're like, well, what's the point? I'm not perfect. And I've felt this like different forms of perfectionism. I found that one of the forms is trying to learn as much as possible. And that can hold you back from even starting because you're always in this cycle of learning and the cycle of personal development where you're always like striving for what's next and how to grow and how to achieve. But then you never actually go out there and take the action and actually start. And I've found myself on both sides of it, where I take too much action too fast and learn very quickly. But then on the other side of it, where I find myself stuck in these cycles of self-development and learning and growing and never actually taking action. And so now I like to do a little mix of like learning and growing, but then also taking action and learning from that action and then going back and learning and growing and adjusting. And like that, I think is the biggest difference between a quote that Tony Robbins, my mentor, says is that like there are so many ideas in circulation, but it's when you put those ideas to action and you bring them to life and take the steps to give them energy and give them life force, that's when things start to flow and create, and that's when your gifts and blessings come into the world. But it's from like not fearing that difficulty of getting started and taking that action. And the other part of being in your 20s is that it can feel so isolating as well. I remember when I graduated and I was living in Northern Virginia, I felt so alone because I felt like I had all these ideas of wanting to travel the world, of wanting to be more creative and wanting to pursue my dreams and passions. But everyone who I was talking to around me was just sort of complacent and content with how things were and weren't really questioning how to live a more extraordinary life or how to step outside of the box or how to get outside of the hamster wheel. It just felt like everyone around me was just sort of like, yeah, this is how it is and it's okay. And that's great for some people who feel that way, but I felt so much in me that was like, no, there's more of the world. There are more passionate people out there. There are like people out there who are doing things and making change and making an impact. And I felt such a strong pull that I wanted to be in that. But I also felt like so crazy and so alone at the same time for feeling that way because every time I would be like, well, it doesn't feel natural to commute 4 hours a day, to sit in an office for 10 hours a day, just to go back home and grind at the gym, like all of my anger and frustration, and then go back to the office and do the same thing the next day. I would complain about that to my mentors and the people around me, and they'd just be like, welcome to adulthood. This is how it is. This is a grind, suck it up, and just work for the rest of your life until you retire. And then, when you retire, then you can start to live a life that you love. And I felt so crazy for being like, no, I feel like my soul is dying, and I feel like that's not life. There's gotta be more to this. If you're feeling that way right now, like if you're feeling this isolation, and this would be a message to my younger self in my 20s, don't feel stuck there. There are people out there who will relate with you. There are communities, there are places, there are spaces. Start to take those tiny steps, and I'll dive into this more, but it gets better. Once I sort of started to embrace that feeling of, okay, well, I feel confused right now and I feel a little lost right now. Let me not try to hide that and act like things are perfect, but instead start to share sort of that feeling. And that's when I made my anonymous Instagram page where I started to share these dreams that I had, and I started to share these hopes that I had, that I wanted to travel and I wanted to dream more and I wanted to create and I wanted to be around passionate people. And I started to take those steps piece by piece and put myself out there. And like small piece by small piece, that's when things sort of started to line up and align. And eventually that's like when the floodgates open and like these magical waves of alignment start to happen. But it's only through those tiny steps that you take at the start. And then the other exciting part of your 20s is that, yeah, it can be confusing that there are so many options out there, but it's also such an exciting time to take more risks, to try different things. And because that really truly is how you grow and how you find what you love. And through doing all these different things is where you find what makes your soul feel most alive and feel most passionate. And then you're like, oh wow, I love that so much. I want to dive into that and I want to build a life around that. And it's through taking those risks and knowing that, like, okay, yeah, it might feel like if I take this risk and I move to this country for a year, you could look at it as a waste of time, or you could look at it as a learning and growing opportunity because you're still so young on the grand scheme of things. Like, life is short, but it's also long when you are taking that action and you're living in alignment and you're just like out there in the world, part of it. Objects in motion will stay in motion and objects at rest will stay at rest. And there are times on that energy pendulum when it's important to rest, but also it's like when you see the gravitational pull of these like balls hitting back and forth on a pendulum, it's only when like one ball hits and then one comes back and then it's two and then it's three, and it's through that flow of energy that they create back and forth together that creates that cycle of movement within the universe. That's what lets you be a part of all of the moving things. Like the other night, I was laying out under the stars and was watching the grass flow and the bees and the butterflies and the wind carries everything that's alive and just pulsating with this beautiful life force energy. And to be a part of it, you're putting yourself out there, and it's so scary. It's so scary to step outside and be courageous and take those risks. But that ultimately is how you find that flow and that alignment and being part of the universe. And the other difficult part of being in your 20s, but also really exciting, is relationships. It is a time of isolation, but it's also a time of meeting other people through these adventures, through the places that you go, through taking risks and living more in alignment with your truth and with what speaks to you. I have met some of the most amazing people, and I've also met some very funny characters along my journey that have taught me lessons and helped me grow and helped me see different parts of myself that maybe I wasn't willing to see before. And so it's also a great time to explore relationships and friendships and also getting to know yourself through those relationships and friendships. Also having the mindset that if things aren't great right now, if things aren't exactly how you'd like them to be right now, and you find yourself that you're judging and you're not happy and you're feeling sad and stuck in this sort of confusion, I really like to have this reminder that life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. It's also a Tony Robbins quote, and it's helped me so much through difficult times because it's shown me that everything that pops up into my life is here to help me grow and here to help me learn. And I now look at everything as a lesson and an opportunity to learn and grow and expand. And that's really helped me sort of slow down and not be in such a rush and really try to live with more intention and presence. And that's opened up the door and window to the most beautiful and magical places and experiences and people that I just feel so grateful for. And I've also had more grace with myself, knowing that, like, yeah, there are places that I want to get and goals that I want to achieve, but I also have had more grace with myself, that knowing that, like, not everyone has everything figured out. We're all learning and we're all here to grow, and that's part of the human experience, the universe experiencing itself. It's so cool that we get to be here and be these cognitive conscious beings in these vessels on this magical, beautiful planet, and also just like laughing and having fun and flowing with life and realizing that, like, I don't have to take things so seriously. I can do my best and I can show up and I can work hard if it feels good, but I can also, and like, it's such a privilege that I've gotten to this space and this mind space, but it's like letting myself know that it's okay to rest, because I used to feel like I was in this just like hamster wheel and this cycle of like go, go, go and grind and being nonstop. But now realizing that, like, I'm a human being and the act of being is like being, and especially like as a female in society, and that's a whole other topic that I would love to talk about another day. But I was raised with so much of this, like, and we all have masculine and feminine energy within us, but I was raised with so much of this masculine energy of like grinding and hustling and doing and like sports and gym and extracurriculars and everything that we were doing in school, and like never letting myself like be a flowing feminine human being. And so that's been cool as well to start to explore and like step into more in my 20s. Another quote I will leave you with, because my whole mind is quotes, is to trade your expectations for appreciation, and in that moment your whole life changes. Another Tony Robbins quote. When I heard that quote, I was resistant to it at first because I like to sort of create and sort of have these expectations for what I want my life to look like. And then I found when I was living with that mindset, I found myself disappointed a lot of the time. And then I also realized it's kind of sad to like want to plan out everything in your life, because when it doesn't go that way, then you're like, holy shit, like why isn't it working out the way I wanted it to? And so now I like to create this like feeling that I would like to feel. Like I would like to feel free, and I would like to feel love, and I would like to feel abundance, and sort of like having a vision of what it would look like, but not feeling so fixated on like, these are the steps that I have to take to get there. Rather, like leaving that magic and leaving that grace of the how up to like faith and guidance and trust in like God or the universe. And that's personally what I believe in, whatever you believe in. But yeah, letting go of that expectation and just having gratitude is the biggest piece of it. It's like your 20s, I wish I was like more in tune with my gratitude and grace for like each step of my journey. Like having that gratitude that like this is where I am now, but I won't give up, and I will have faith, and I will have grace, and I will continue on the journey with gratitude. That has helped me so much as well. And so if you're feeling lost in your 20s, you're not alone. I hope something in this video spoke to you. And if it did, comment down below, let me know. And here's to living your most extraordinary life. I will see you in the next one.